Hello, good morning, and welcome to Thoughts and Updates for this week. It is a very bright, brisk morning here in Scotland, and once again, we are still in lockdown. It is the middle of March, and I believe that overnight there were certain parts of Scotland that had some kind of frost. So it's spring, certainly has sprung, and it's brighter in the morning. And certainly doing this outside the house is warmer than it has been. No snow on the ground or anything like that, and the canal and also where the boats come, the barges are moored in the marina just across from us. It seems to be in a bright and a wonderful place. So, as we look over the last week, writing has been interesting this week because I have been doing a little bit on Davy Moore, obviously Marvin Hagler. The news broke last night that at the age of 66 he has died, so Brad's been on giving it, oh my God, we need to do something about that. So that will be the main focus, I would imagine, of this week. But that's a biggie because what an incredible boxer he was overnight. We had two repeats rather than revenge. Estrada beating El Chocolatito. In fact, that was a revenge because El Chocolatito beat him 8.5 years ago. And what was seen as a fairly dodgy decision, and Celia Breakhouse did not manage to beat Jessica McCaskill. In fact, was well beaten according to the reports overnight. So McCaskill is certainly calling out Katie Taylor for a rematch there. And of course, the problem with Celia Breakhouse, I'll come to in a minute in terms of women's boxing, is what happens next. I've also been looking at the career of Davy Moore, who died at the age of 29 in 1963 for Ringside Report, and the fallout on Kailyard debates and Kailyard visions about Meghan Markle and the interview she did with Oprah Winfrey with Prince Harry. Also added into that, I was asked to do something on things I'm watching on BBC iPlayer and other things, and I've been looking at Spooks and Lisa Faulkner, not just the Celebrity MasterChef winner, and what happened when she was the focus of the largest number of complaints to the Broadcasting Commission in 2002 for Scottish Football Supporters Association. Sven-Göran Eriksson suggesting that he might be up for the Aberdeen job sends him up there with an estate agent called a certain Mr. Glass. Also, the elephant in George Square, what has happened with regards to lockdown, and I'll come to that as well, because I think those are things that I think are very, very interesting. Also, been looking at some stuff. I haven't written the reviews, but there's some interesting stuff on online at the Space Season 2. Also, a brilliant piece, Tramway, Ellen Renton has done. Very visual, 5-6 minutes worth. Great, well worth looking at Tramway's Instagram for. And Home, Manchester's Home, once again coming up with some decent material. So, plenty to get my teeth into in terms of the reviewing stuff, and seeing theatre beginning to show some kind of reaction to the lockdown, which is more than just throwing out some filled performances or trying to put some filled stuff together. I see the Earwig from the Tron, the Lyceum, the Traverse as well, some new writing coming there too. So lots and lots of movement in the Royal Conservatives of Scotland, the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, RCS. I've got a new season coming up soon as well, so there's plenty happening. So let me start by talking about women's boxing and get that out of the way, because Cecilia Breakhouse, after 30 odd undefeated fights, came up against Jessica McCaskill, who had been beaten by Katie Taylor, and all belts were on the line, and Breakhouse lost. Then the rematch came about, and the lack of depth in women's boxing is always an issue. Because, of course, last week Claressa Shields, after 12 fights, is now a 3-weight world champion. We have had a number of British boxers who have gone 12, 14, 16, 17, 18 fights and then come unstuck at European level because of the depth in men's boxing. So how do we see the the way in which women's boxing has gone, and indeed how do we see whether or not these people, like your Jessica McCaskill, Katie Taylor and Clarissa Shields, should be seen in the pantheon and the development of boxing as a whole. Well, many of them are training alongside men in gyms. Many of them are getting the same type of nutrition and indeed the same type of sports scientists as the men. They are training to the same elite level. They are doing what they have to do in order to win world titles. And one of the old boxing cliches is you can only beat whoever is put in front of you. And that's, for me, it. Yes, there's not going to be, for Cecilia Brakehouse, many options. There are big fights out there, and if you can't compete in the big fights, then your career is more or less at an end. And after a distinguished career, perhaps Breakhouse's career has come to an end because she's not necessarily going to get the types of fights that are going to cement a legacy. In fact, and if she were in men's boxing, it would be the type of fights that the tail end of careers like Kell Brooks, Anthony Crawler, and others have, I hesitate to say suffer, but you know, when it starts to be a real difficulty to get yourself up for some of that in men's boxing, it tends to come to an end. In women's boxing, there's not necessarily the option for that. And until such times as that is there, which will come with the increasing number of women's boxers and the increasing popularity of it, then it's going to be very difficult to see a former champion managing to rebuild, because the rebuilding programme can only happen with fighting the people who beat them to lose their titles. So it takes me to the elephant in the room for both Scottish football and for society. We are in the midst of a pandemic. I have written this morning about my nipping down to Ayr, getting caught in a traffic jam in the M8 and having to sit for 30 minutes or thereabouts waiting for it to clear, getting down to Ayr, picking up Keris, my daughter, going to Azu, nipping in, so we thought, and getting stuck in a car park for 20 plus minutes with the most intense traffic jam that I've seen for a long time. I thought we were in a pandemic. Oh yes, we are in a pandemic. Are we? Was there a fire sale and toilet roll in Asda that I knew nothing about, where people get in to catch up in the butter before it all ran out? I know it was a Saturday, and I know the norm on a Saturday would be, when there wasn't a pandemic on, that there would be large numbers of people going in to the local supermarket. I know also that there's been an explosion in online shopping and deliveries for most of the supermarkets. So why did I end up in not one but two traffic jams yesterday, when we are supposed to be under lockdown restrictions? And you're not supposed to be going outside of your local area. It seems very, very curious, very, very strange. So when Rangers won the league last week, and there were massive celebrations in George Square, in fact there were massive celebrations all over the place, the response from the police would appear to be, we're not going to arrest anybody, it's normal joyful exuberance, although we will try and advise them to go home. Fast forward a week. The death of a young woman in London leads to a number of people wanting to reclaim the streets in a movement reminiscent of what happened with the Yorkshire Ripper case, where women were told not to be out in Leeds and Yorkshire after a certain time, and women took to the streets to say, well, actually, maybe it should be the men who are not out after a certain time, quite rightly pointing out that they weren't guilty of any kind of offence, and what the police were trying to find was a man who was attacking them. Well, down in London, having seen the way in which the police had dealt with Rangers supporters, or dealt with regards to Liverpool supporters or Leeds supporters who celebrated their team getting into the Premier League. We have police tactics that are now all over the internet involving them arresting women. Heavy-handed tactics was how they were described. Now, I don't know whether they were heavy-handed, they were wrong, they were right or whatever. But looking at it, it would appear that what has happened in the United Kingdom is what we had seen in Capitol Hill in America a few short months ago, where the police, dealing with people who are perhaps closely akin to a political philosophy that they prefer, get treated with respect, while those who may be more challenging, who may actually be exercising the democratic right to protest against what they feel is the lack of concern, the lack of action, is quite startling. Especially, ironically or unfortunately, because the young woman who has been found dead is the perpetrator of the crime, allegedly, has appeared in court, has been found, and was a serving police officer. It doesn't add to the positivity that we should be feeling towards those organisations and agencies out there who are supposed to be protecting our liberties and rights. It goes along with the way in which the number of assaults on NHS staff and frontline care workers has gone through the roof, alongside a 1% pay rise on offer for nurses in the United Kingdom from the British government. We were asked to clap for carers on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. We were asked to stand outside and show our public support to the heroes. We have seen murals plastered all over the United Kingdom suggesting that we give up Superman and Batman and replace them with nurses and doctors and healthcare workers and frontline caring staff. And yet the government in Westminster doesn't see this as anything other than just reward for them, and no more should be given, no quarter offered. 1%. Doesn't help that the MPs down in Westminster are due to get another bumper pay rise, which I know is sorted by an independent commission, and it's not down to the MPs giving themselves something to which they are not supposed to deserve. But why don't we take that independent commission, hand over the nurses, and ask them to give us an opinion on what they should be rewarded with, especially since we have sat and heard the pious politician tell us about how we should remember that the frontline workers are heroes. If they're heroes, reward them. And as for the pandemic, heed the warnings. Do what you're supposed to do. And to that end, because football ends up in the spotlight, I hope that the Old Firm game next Saturday is postponed to another time. It's a powder keg. And once again, what will happen is we will see football put in society's crosshairs rather than celebrating what has happened in terms of us actually getting a season over and done with. So for me, until next week, where I shall be celebrating a milestone, if I can get through today and a few other days, one day at a time. But till then, bye for now.